try to do something physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual every day. That's value to my life. Is your business doing the profit margins you want? I think that there's power in that word no, but also power in the clarity of having a vision for yourself. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Kingdom Men Transfer Man Nation podcast, brought to you by our sponsor, the Acquisition CEO. If you're looking to buy or sell a business or need consulting about buying or selling a business, hit him up at theacquisitionceo.com. And today I've got a really special guest on, good friend of mine, and kind of a mentor to me as well, Steve Leitch, the Scottish swimmer, the Scottish servant swimmer. Nice. I guess that's what we just came up with. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do. Just give us some background.
Who am I? What do I do? Steve Moby Leitch. Yeah, right. So we'll start with that. Moby. Everyone's like, what does Moby mean? Well, I became a grandfather last year.
Okay.
So that was pretty cool.
That's pretty exciting.
My grandfather name's Moby. So it kind of goes with the swimming thing.
It does.
Who am I? I'm saved by grace.
Amen.
I'm a child of God, disciple of Jesus, and I love to swim, and I love to swim to serve others.
Yeah.
That's really that's my thing. Big into mentorship, really huge into mentorship, because mentorship and discipleship, same thing.
Same
right?
thing, yeah.
Same thing. And who else? That's really who I am. What I'm all about is married, coming up on 10 years married to someone, Kelly, who I've known since I was about 2.
Yeah.
Which grew up in different countries, which is crazy, right? And we have a messy blended family of 6. We blended it really well and really badly.
Yeah.
And, we're still kind of living the consequences of divorce and blending and all that. But, God can handle that too, and give that to him. And then in business, like you said, I swim to raise money for other people. But now our big focus is we're just starting Rising Tides Ministry, which is mentorship houses for men and women coming out of biblical rehab. And really, the big discussion around this has been, are we providing houses? No, we're providing homes. Are we landlords? No, we're training mentors to really walk alongside of men and women who we want them to know their past does not define them.
That's right.
And here's the big one. God has a purpose for your life, even beyond your past.
Yeah.
So that's what our mentors' jobs is going to be, just walking that along with them.
Yeah. No, so you hit a couple of really amazing points there. You talked about our past doesn't define us.
Yep.
We talked about your love to swim, which we're going to talk about that in a minute, because it's just an amazing story. It blows my mind when I tell people I have a friend who swims as far as you do. They're like, it just seems unfathomable. So we'll talk about that. And also another interesting point too, the consequences of divorce and what those things look like. And a lot of times, we can talk about that a little bit, but I want people to know that our choices, they matter, right? And the past doesn't define us, but we can't give up. We can't quit. We still have to navigate, right? So you still woke up today and y'all have been married for 10 years. And so you still have an opportunity to navigate this thing together, and God comes into our lives and he gives us grace and love and mercy. And you lead together with that kind of thing. And I've experienced just a lot of renewal in my marriage as well over the last few recent years. And so being married is also a challenge, right? You're going to take 2 sinners and put them together and put them in a house and be like, go figure it all out, right? Kids, grandkids, pay the bills.
2 sinners in a house together and then
everybody
else.
Yeah,
right,
yeah. And then, you want to be an entrepreneur
let's
too?
add more sinners.
Yeah, let's just add more little sinners. That's kids, just little sinners. We're all human.
Right.
One of the things I realized the other day, though, that me and my wife have really worked on is we no longer, when you're first married, it's easy to blame each other for your sin, right? Whatever those shortcomings may be, whether it's addiction or work too much or idols or, external validation, and you're just not, in alignment with who God made you to be. But one thing that we realized is we stopped blaming each other for being sinners, and we started helping each other through it. And that was kind of a pivotal thing in our marriage where, at first, you're like, oh, well, he didn't take out the trash. He doesn't love me, or he's too busy, or she did this. And you're kind of almost picking out each other's shortfalls instead of going, hey, you know what? I know you have shortcomings. I have shortcomings. Let's encourage each other through the process and the journey instead of beating each other up over it every day. So I think that's a critical point for people to take away, is that there is a past, and we'll tie that into kind of what you said about it doesn't necessarily define us. And we've all made choices, right? Even John Maxwell told me one time, he said, we all have days that we hope nobody finds out about, right? So we all have bad days, but they don't have to define us, right? That's kind of the purpose of the whole relationship with Christ where, we've been forgiven, right? And we can repent, right? And we can move on from those things. But it's easy said, it's hard to do, right? Especially in addiction and recovery and really any situation where Satan is a great sales guy. That's what I always tell people. And he sells us these stories.
Whoa.
Okay, all right.
Let's not give him more credit.
Okay, good point.
He sold.
Yeah.
He sold only because, we'll go right back to Genesis, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's where the problem began.
Okay.
He sold the story to Eve because she was into the marketing.
Yeah.
She was like,
"Oh,
that sounds kind of true.
Sounds like a good idea."
And Adam's standing right there. Yeah. And here was the problem. And kingdom men, this is what we're talking about right here, right today. This is where it all started. Adam was standing right there listening to the same sales pitch and did nothing.
Right.
So much so that we know that when she took a bite of the apple, right? Because she's like, that marketing appeals to my soul.
Yeah.
I feel like I need that in my life, along with, all the other things the world's going to market over the next 2,000 years. And she turned, and within arm's reach was the man who was supposed to lead.
Right.
And didn't, and handed the apple. So not only did he not lead and say, no, this marketing, this world marketing that is being marketed to you, this is not going to fill the hole or the void. Okay? He was passive in that, and then he was passive in, no, you can go down that road, but I'm not.
Yeah, that's
and this is the road I'm going to go down with. And I think as man, especially kingdom man, there comes a point in your marriage, in your parenting, in your business, in your friendships, when you're like, the Lord is calling me to do this. This is where I'm going. You're welcome to come with me or not. The choice is yours. Yeah. And that's a hard conversation for men to have, right? Because that's not passive.
That's not passive, and that's a great word, tolerance and passive, right? And I wasn't the leader of my life or my family for a long time, right? I was busy being entertained or escaping my emotions and thoughts and all the hard things and conversations that I really needed to have.
You're just plucking through the orchard.
Right. You're just plucking through the orchard, eating the apples, You're just going at it. And so I think that there's a lot of really good information that you just laid out. And talking about, don't give Satan more credit than he's due. That's a good point. I like that. But also the fact that he does sell us the stories, right?
100%.
And we tend to keep them like anchors or like bricks or things we stack up in our pack every day. But that's not our identity, who God made us to be. And so we've really got to get humble, and we've got to get down on our knees, literally, and start to set those stories down, right? And start to ask ourselves, do those stories add value to my life? Are those stories in alignment with what God says? Are they in alignment with the Bible? One of the things I found in my own personal life I was guilty of is, I wanted to start to set the stories down, but I wasn't real familiar with what the Bible said about what God's Word said about who I am, right? So it takes work, meaning I realized something was off, in my life, just emotionally and mentally and spiritually. But then I also realized I had to do something about it, which was the other part of the challenge, right? I can't expect to know what God's Word says about me and who I am as a person and the wisdom and how I should operate and all those things if I don't read it,
The more you learn about God, the more you learn about who you are. Mm-hmm. And here's another thing. Like, people are trying to twist that now into, I need to find myself and learn about myself so I can find God. See how the subtle difference in the world, what the world's saying. And it's like, no. The more I learn about God, the more I'll learn about who I am, why he created me, what he created me for, and I'll be able to hear him.
Yeah.
But you've got to drown out the noise.
Yeah, no, it's good. So you get a studio where there's no noise.
The gospel's the only truth that anchors and spans the test of time. It does not change.
I agree. I was stunned.
It does not change.
I was stunned this morning. I was reading in my Bible study in Proverbs, and the post I made, the reference was talking about how, don't be busy trying to make money, right? This is basically the short version of it. And so how many people do you know in today's world that are just busy trying to make money? They have that as an idol in their life. But here's where I'm going with that is thousands of years ago, you got to hustle. You got to be intentional.
Got to grind. Got to put everything on the line.
Thousands of years ago, right, what you're saying, it stands the test of time. Thousands of years ago, somebody wrote that wisdom into the Bible. So that tells me that when that was written, they were dealing with the same thing that we deal with today. And so it still stands. It stood the test of time. And you read, but you don't realize that unless you get in the Word and you spend time reading it, you know, and you've got to be committed to that process.
It's good. I mean, God spoke into existence the universe.
Yeah.
The earth, the stars, the moon.
You, me,
more stars than we can count. And if you've ever been in somewhere with no light pollution, like, you very quickly realize that Abraham's descendants are more than the stars. Wow, that's a lot of stars.
Yeah.
So if he can speak that into existence, then if we're seeking him, trusting him, and working towards that deeper relationship, do you think he can speak into existence our finances?
Sure. Yeah.
Because, life breathes. He breathes life into our nostrils, right?
Yeah.
Same thing.
I look at the Bible for mental, spiritual, physical, emotional, and financial wisdom.
Yeah.
Right?
Physical we don't think about, right?
Physical we don't think about. But if you look, and that's what I had to start to do. My actions and my soul were at conflict with each other. And there was a friction there. And I knew that, right? And you can see it in kind of the fruit, in your life, your relationships, your marriage, those kind of things, and then your choices. And so I had to start to evaluate, like, what is that friction? What is that rub? And it's really related to my choices were not in alignment with who God made me to be and how God made me to operate. And I kind of had a moment where I was like, I've had enough. Like, I'm just fine, I'll read the Bible. I'll get in the Word. I'll commit time to that, right? And it's been a game changer, but it's really funny because a lot of times when I'm coaching or mentoring somebody and, we get deeper on the conversation and there's that friction inside of their soul and they're like, man, I'm just praying for God to show up. And I ask them, well, are you in the Word? And they're like, well, no. I'm like, well, God's given us the Word to go to, right? If you're praying for God to show up, He already has. You kind of got to go do your part. You got to go pick up the book and read the thing. And that the Bible is full of action words, verb words, where we're required to do our part, right? He's done His part and we have to do our part. I heard a pastor one time put it this way: God's grace, love, and mercy are free, but our life on this earth is not. And if you think about that, it's very true, right? There's when you tend to the garden, when you make choices, there are results for those things. Kind of like what we were talking about, bad choices, whether addiction or marriage or relationships, whatever business, whatever those things may be. There's always a result for the choice or for the action. And a lot of times, even in my life, my actions were not in alignment with who God made me to be. So the fruit wasn't the fruit that God intended for me to have in a lot of ways. Mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially, right? And so when we keep it real simple, because that's one of my favorite words is simple, right?
Yeah.
And you go read the Word and you tie that with some good Bible study plans, which I always tell people, download the Bible app, right?
Simple.
Keep it simple. Download the Bible app. Go in there. You can go to plans. You can find all kinds of plans on anxiety, on relationships, marriage, finances, and then dedicate time every day to where in the morning or evening or whatever works for your schedule to where you're doing that plan, but not just to read it, but to chew on it, right? To reflect, right? Make sure that you're not just reading it to check the box. And that's okay at first if that's what you want to do. It's better than nothing. But get some time. Go sit down. Take 20 minutes, take 30 minutes out of your day, which everybody can do. And I call it sharpening the tongue tie, sharpening the sword and strengthening the shield, right? Because Satan is out to get us every day. And so there's a lot that we could talk about on that subject. But let's kind of go back and talk about the encouraging piece, that just because we spent time in one place in our sin doesn't mean that that's who we have to be and that's where we have to stay. Because I think a lot of people, they really struggle with that. You fall off the wagon a day and they just all of a sudden wear that as their name tag. They're like, oh, this is just my identity. But that's Satan just trying to sell them that story, right? Instead of them repenting and going, that's not who God made me to be. That's not what God made me to do. I'm going to reflect and pay attention on setting those stories down. And for me, it's allowed me to operate in more faith and less fear in my life. And so
fear is the opposite of faith.
It is. Yeah, it's 100%.
Yeah.
It's really funny when you start to study these things and you start to implement them in your life and you start to really realize how those things are. When people are afraid, I'm like, well, how much faith you got? I'm afraid this business isn't going to work out. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that. A lot of people, they operate with a lot of fear. And I just ask them, well, you're a man of faith or a woman of faith, person of faith. You believe in God. How much faith you got?
So here's the other part of faith. And what you said there is, let's just take the guy that's starting a business.
Yeah.
Okay. And what you said was so funny because you've heard it. So I'm afraid that this business isn't going to work out. Like you're already worried about the result.
Right. Yeah.
And not the process of just like, I'm running a business for God.
Right.
So it cannot fail if it's who am I going to meet, how am I going to share my story, how am I going to get to know their story, and how are we going to share the gospel?
Yeah.
Like in business, that is, your business will grow.
Yeah.
No, the zeros might not be the expectation that you want or whatever, but those zeros don't matter.
They don't define
those zeros
you.
don't matter. I was doing my Joe Biden joke there. Nobody's saying that.
Right.
But sorry. It's a joke we had going this summer. It just started to come out. But no, that's the thing. We all get so results based,
mm-hmm.
and faith isn't a result.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process.
That's right.
It's a process. You're never going to arrive in your teens, your 20s, your 30s. You're just, I'm going in my 50s, just turned 50. I haven't arrived. Not even close.
Right.
Pretty sure it's not going to happen in my 60s.
Right.
Probably not going to happen in my 70s. I can't say I'm going to arrive until I step over into the next life, right?
Right.
And it's that process of like constantly, okay, the more and more I can ask, what do you want of me today? How can I step into this?
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't do it on everything because there's some like, oh, I got this.
Right.
And it blows up in my face. And God's like, yeah, see, well, you could have given that to me as well.
Yeah. The process
of
surrender.
And it's the process of surrender. Yeah.
You're 100% right. We fall in love with the result, right?
Or win-lose.
We define ourselves by the result. We chase the result instead of the process or the journey. You could be, financial and physical are two things people can usually really easily relate to. People say they want to make money, but if you look at their tasks, they're not related, right? They're not in the day-to-day journey. People say they want to be in shape, but if you look at the actions and the tasks and what they prioritize, they're not in the journey. And so what I have found is a lot of people, they fall in love with that result instead of the process, right? They want to have a great relationship with God, but they don't spend time in the Word, right? It's like it's the biblical concept of tending to the garden, right?
Right.
If you want the fruit, guess what? You got to build the fence, you got to till the soil, prep the soil, water the seeds, prune the plants, do the things. But what's encouraging about that is if you spend time tending to the garden, right, and you apply wisdom and you learn and you surround yourself with other people to help you learn how to be a better gardener, the fruit almost always happens, whatever that may look like, whether it's a healthier marriage, right? If you spend time in the tending to the garden in your marriage, you're going to have a better marriage.
Every time.
If you spend time in the garden physically, you're going to have better results in your physical fitness. If you spend time tending to the garden in your business and doing good things and biblically wise things, you're going to have the fruit of the finances in your business, right? And here's what's always interesting to me, talking about like faith and business, because when I got into real estate, I heard a guy said, you should never talk about politics and religion, right, in business. For me, Christianity is not religion.
It's not. I was going to say, I never talk about religion. Yeah, I talk about Jesus.
That's exactly right. So, but it's funny because I do talk about it a lot, but it's made such a significant difference in my life. But here's the thing that it really boils down to. If the simple version that I've kind of put it into is God calls us to do good things where we are, right? And that's really the simple thing, whether that's in our personal life or our marriage or friends or even in business. And I always ask people this, wouldn't you rather do business with somebody that has a foundational principle that they believe that they should do good things wherever they are? And if we start with that, things are probably going to work out pretty well for everybody involved. And then I go, yeah, that makes good sense. Instead of saying, hey, I'd rather do some deceitful things. I'm really motivated by the end result and not this process and who we can become in the journey, but that we just should agree that we should do good things wherever we are and wherever we go. And if we start with that, we can make a difference, right?
Yeah, and I'll pull it back even a step further from that, which is when I look at a man and his relationship with his wife
mm-hmm.
and what he's doing inside of his house. Now, in my situation, my son hasn't talked to me in 3 months now. My daughter's communicating with me, but I haven't seen her in 3 months. So, there's broken relationships there.
Sure.
But inside of my home, I'm working on cultivating the relationships of the people I have in my house. And when you look at that, are you worshiping together? Are you praying together? Are you, in the Word together? Those kind of things. If you can't do it in your own,
mm-hmm.
and let's just call it a little business.
Yeah.
If you want to do that,
yeah.
if you, and I taught the kids this growing up, learn how to serve the person right next to you in your house, not go out to find somebody to serve.
Yeah.
Because if you serve from the inside out, it becomes just natural. It's exercising the muscle, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference between the guys who are talking about religion, because you can see, like you're looking online, you're looking at things, and you can just sense something's off.
Sure.
You know, it's interesting. Like about 2 years ago, when we met for coffee.
Yeah.
You're on fire. Like you just come out the gates, quit drinking. Like you're just spraying everybody.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to balance these scales.
Yeah.
And the reason I know it, because I did the same thing.
Yeah. Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And but it was within about 6 to 8 months I started noticing Lachey showing up, and your conversations, like your posts and things shifted online, which was less about Justin's coming out and just spraying the world with like his newfound enthusiasm and trying to, you know, balance the scales.
Right.
To now he's, I need to invest in my marriage first. And you start seeing Lachey showing up, and I'm like, okay, now here we go.
Right.
Now here we go.
Yeah. 100% right. You're like, I gotta right all the wrongs. Like I gotta just get to do it all, you know?
You see this bag of guilt and shame?
Yeah.
I forgot to leave it at the cross.
Yeah.
You know? Like I know we think we're forgiven, and we say we're forgiven.
Yeah.
But like as men, we just love to wear that, like that
As
badge of honor.
I was gonna say, like a badge of honor.
Carry it, that rucksack of guilt and shame, instead of going, man, this is one of the most profound things my dad ever said to me. He said, Steve, you don't go to heaven or hell because of sin.
Mm-hmm.
Sin got handled on the cross. He goes, many shall knock, but few will I know. It's relationship.
It's so true.
So it's every day, every minute. How, Jesus, man, just waking up. Thank you for today. What can I do today? How can I serve for you today? What do you want of me today? And, you know, sometimes you hear it clear, and sometimes you're like, okay, we're just going to take a spin at this and see what happens,
right.
You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's relationship. So if that's modeled for us, like he says, right, then what is a marriage supposed to look like?
We should be modeling
relationship.
Yeah. It's so true. It's funny. I was having a conversation with somebody, I think late last week. Could have been earlier this week because it's just Wednesday, but we were talking about change, right? Let's say a husband changes or a wife changes. Somebody has a moment in their life where they kind of wake up, right? And they're like, listen, I've arrived at a destination I don't like. It's really time to do something about it, whatever that may mean. Well, in my case, it took about 6 or 8 months for Shay to believe me.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
I'm surprised it happened that fast.
Yeah.
That's a win.
Yeah, it's a huge win. But, you know, you're going on this journey of setting down all these stories and all these bricks and all these things that you're having to just go through in that season of life. Because when you decide to change the way that you've been operating, there's a lot of things that come out of that, right? A lot of good things, but also a lot of bad things that you have to have conversations about. And that's painful, and that's just part of the process. But I remember one time she looked at me and she said, you know, because I'm like, babe, I am fighting the fight over here. Like, where are you at? You know? And she's like, I don't know if I believe you yet. You know? And I'm like, okay, all right. I guess I got to keep showing up, you know? And because you're like.
Because your words don't matter.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's the
right.
thing. You know, just because you've turned the corner.
Right.
And the light switch has been switched on for you.
Now what are you going to do?
That's why, you know, someone very close to me, Steve, shut your mouth and let your actions speak louder than words until people start speaking so loudly for you that you don't have to speak anymore.
That's good. That's good.
And I really enjoyed speaking in the beginning. It was gross. It was really gross. And to this day, you know, I can still get a little jumpy and like, hey, look at me. And I have to ground myself like, no, this isn't about me. So I'm constantly saying, I do this to serve other people. I want to serve other people.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I can't believe how much I get in trouble for doing the dishes in the sink. I was coming to do those. I'm like, I just do them.
I just want to do them.
I just want to do them. Yeah. It's no big deal to me.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's so true. And it's really the reason I talk about it a lot is because it made such Christ in my relationship and that redemption in my life and my personal life with my wife and just my household and me, myself, mentally and emotionally. When I really started to set things down at the cross, right, and be like, and have faith. All right, God, he literally came knocking on my door and called me out of a grave. And I had to have a moment where I had enough, right? To be able to start to set those things down and set my pride down, be humble and raise my hand and say, hey, I got problems. Yeah. And so I talk about it a lot because now I'm free, right? Like the way that I feel mentally and emotionally and spiritually, and just the way that I'm connected to God and the alignment there and all of those things and it's a daily process of continuing to set things down, right? But that's what I want to encourage people to experience, because you can be free from the things and the stories of the past. And we'll talk about that too. It's a good point to segue into it, about all of those things don't define you. They don't define who you are, who you have to be, right? It's a part of your journey and a part of your story, absolutely. And you've arrived at a place, and there's going to be some baggage with that, right, because of our choices. But get committed to your faith and step out of the fear of what that baggage is going to be or what. Don't predefine that. Just say, hey, you know what? I know that God is knocking on my heart, mind, and soul, and he doesn't want me to participate in these things because it's led me to a destination of pain and frustration and chaos and anxiety, and I'm in the dark and I'm alone. That doesn't have to be who you are, right? And so Christ gives us the opportunity to set those things down and operate in alignment with who he made us to be, right?
Yeah. And you don't need to prove how much you've changed,
right?
Because you haven't changed a lot.
Right.
Just your mind, your heart and soul have changed. It says, I no longer want to do this. So it's not about, at that point, proving to everyone that you're making this change. It's just about going, Lord, continue to change me, continue to change me, continue.
And day by day.
And I actually think you'll get there faster the less you try and prove it.
Hope you're enjoying the podcast. We want to give a shout out to our sponsor, The Acquisition CEO. If you're curious about buying or selling a business, hit him up at the link below, theacquisitionceo.com. Also give him a follow on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And now back to the podcast. Thanks. That's why in sobriety I never got into the counting the days thing for me. It was more of a day by day, right? Because when I would fail, it made me feel like a loser. You know what I mean? And it made me want to wear that as an identity. Like, I just can't do this. Instead of going,
not good enough.
Right, I'm just not good enough.
You're not good enough.
Right, you can't do it.
See, it told you.
Right, exactly. All those things.
There's just too much going on in this world.
You can't do it.
Like, you need this.
Yeah, you got to have that. And so
your wife was right.
Exactly, right. All the things. And so that's why I encourage people, take it one day at a time. Whatever it is that you're dealing with in life, step by step, moment by moment. Get honest with yourself, have reflection, have accountability, have people in your corner that you trust, that you want to have conversations with about hard things. But wake up each day, just like you said, and be like, all right, God, I got to navigate today. And that's why personally I love to get in the Word in the morning, because it helps set me up with my shield to be, looking for the things to come knocking.
Yeah,
throughout the day.
You're building your house on solid ground. I'll give you something to think about. This is okay.
Sure. Yeah.
The process of one day is too big of a process. It's just too big.
Yeah.
Like there's from the time you wake up. So I'm up at like 4:30 every morning.
Yeah.
Till 9:30 every night. Hopefully not 10.
Right.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting older. Think about how many things you're going to experience and go through in that time. So that's just trying to make it through a day is ridiculous. What did it say? Pray constantly. So, like, if you break that process down, and we'll talk about this later, the swimming, the swimmers, ultra marathon swimmers like I do, we all talk about just make it to the next feat, and that was 30 minutes. Let me tell you. After you've been swimming for 10 hours, 30 minutes can sometimes feel like an eternity.
Sure.
And you're just like, oh my gosh. And first guy to finish Ocean's 7, Stephen Redford told Darren Miller, who Darren Miller told me, I was like, Steve, just keep putting one hand in front of the other. And I was like, see, that's the process. So it's not one day. It's like
step by step.
Step by step. Right.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And I appreciate that. I'm always down. Another thing that I would encourage people to is be open to taking advice from people. As men, it's hard, especially when you want to pretend to be this thing and you have all this pride, whether it's in business or physical or whatever it may be. Pride never got anybody anywhere. Humility will take you places, and humility will get you in rooms. Kindness and gratitude has gotten me in places with people where I'm like, hey, thank you for your time. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for who God made you to be. You think I could buy you a coffee? and that's allowed me to connect with a lot of people, and I'm thankful for that. But let's talk about swimming, right? The concept of all that. So those of you that don't know, Steve, is it an ultra swimmer? Is that what it's called?
So they call it like ultra marathon swimming, or anything over a 10K is marathon swimming.
Okay.
I would say we're more like, as the more and more I meet the community, I'm like, yeah, we're kind of adventure swimmers.
Adventure, yeah, no doubt. So let's talk about the adventure last year in Hawaii.
Yeah.
That was 28 miles.
Yeah, from Molokai to Oahu on Easter Sunday night.
Okay.
Started at 6 o'clock from the beach in Molokai, on the west of Molokai.
Which that documentary will be coming out probably on some platforms in the near future.
Yeah. It's out on, we actually have it on like a Vimeo.
Yeah.
You can rent it or buy it right now. Beyond the Shoreline, something. We can get you the link.
Yeah.
But yeah, thankfully a distributor just picked it up. And, again, that story is a wee bit about me and a whole lot about God and what he does, even down to just like swimming on my first big Ocean 7, which looking back, I'm like, man, we hung on for dear life. I don't even know how I finished that swim.
Yeah.
Never mind the boat didn't sink.
Right.
It was insanity.
Yeah.
We went out. We had nowhere to stay. I won't give too much away, but it was kind of like we're on the island and the swim's in jeopardy because we had just flown across from Maui.
Yeah.
And we go out. We end up going out 6 o'clock at night. It gets dark around 7:30.
Yeah. And
as you're protected coming off Molokai, you're kind of protected. By the time we hit the channel, we're in 4 and 8 foot swells, 22 knot winds, gusts up to 35. Portuguese man of wars, shark shield, nausea, a lot of sickness, and I almost got hit by a rogue fishing boat in the middle of the night. So it was, one of my kayakers got sick.
Yeah.
Had to get him out. It's one of those things, like, if you don't love it, you could really, you're like, what is the point in this? But it's such an adventure, and so the great things that came from it. Number one, I always want to swim. When I decided I was going to swim again and start getting into this, it was like, if I'm going to swim, it has to be more than just completing something.
Right.
That is really selfish and boring, and human achievement is like it's not eternal.
Right. Great.
It's
Put
just
it on
not
the wall.
eternal. Yeah. Like, give me a certificate. I'm like, psh.
Right.
But knowing that if we've raised money that might get, say, a foster kid into the counseling need, that helps them get closer to the Lord, then helps them, get a relationship with Jesus, that then helps them to share the gospel at some point. But they never know that this money that was raised to them was some Scottish guy that likes to swim. That's really, really attractive to me.
Yeah. Well, that's purpose.
No accolades, no names on buildings, things like that.
Yeah.
But I think also in those moments when you're stripped down physically to a physical rock bottom that you're actually putting yourself in, you're like, you've chosen to do this.
Yeah.
And I know we talk about rock bottoms and people are like, I didn't choose to hit rock bottom. Well, you kind of did with your choices.
Yeah.
I did with my choices. Yeah. But if you do it on purpose, like in a physical event,
like you subject yourself to
you really get stripped down to who, like down to that foundation of God again.
Right.
And the most powerful thing that came from that swim was this. I was 4 hours in. I had been sick for about 2 hours at this point, electrocuted by the shark shield. Portuguese man of wars had tabbed me like 3 or 4 times, or 2 or 3 times, can't remember. And I turned to the kayaker, Miles, and I was like, hey, man, I just don't know.
Yeah. And
he's like, Steve, it's called a challenge for a reason. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And I always forget that. I'm like, there's less. I was the 94th person in history to do this, right? So I was like, I'm going to pray about that. And that right there, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago, wouldn't have been my go-to.
Sure.
So like, there's the growth right there. Like I'm physically rock bottom. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I'm going to pray
about it.
There you go. There's the framework, right? And before I left the island, I'd filmed this video, and it was me asking in Jesus' name for him to calm the seas, because I know he can, to give us a fast crossing across. And the winds would just push me, and we'd get across the channel. And have that video to this day. It's actually in the documentary. Yeah. It's really, really cool. I'm so glad I filmed it. And I just started praying. I was like, hey, Lord. And it was one of those, like,
hey,
how you doing?
Yeah.
Remember when I asked in Jesus' name, like, for you to calm the seas? Like,
that would be great.
I asked in Jesus' name. And how I remember is then a wave just hit me.
Yeah.
Pushed me under again. And I just heard plain as day. I heard him say, look, Steve, I never promised to calm the seas. I promised to calm you in the seas.
That's good.
And I'm like, oh, man.
You're like, okay.
I was like, I popped up, and I'm like, we're good.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you think about it, Peter got out of the boat, right?
Mm-hmm. I love
it.
It
didn't say the storm stopped.
Right.
The storm didn't stop. He just took his eyes off Jesus and noticed the storm. And why did? Because you had little faith, right? And I think that's it. Like, when we get distracted by marketing, politics, the Jonesies,
all the things,
you know, whatever it is, we jump out of God's economy.
That's good.
And last night's a perfect example of that in the debate. Like you're talking about, this is what I'm going to do for the economy. This is how I'm going to save you. This is how. No, you're not.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Neither of you.
Right.
Like, neither of you are going to save us.
Right.
Like,
it ain't happening.
It's just not working, because you're not God. You're not the creator, and you're not going. I'm living in your economy, not their economy.
Right.
You know, and I think when we remember that, there's a peace that surpasses all understanding, but we're still going to go through the storm. And it's not like the waves calmed at that point.
Right.
I'm still getting beat up for the next 8 hours.
Right.
You know, but I land on the beach at 49 years old, in Hawaii, and on Oahu, under 13 hours, one of 7 people in history. Like, there's no reason that should have happened.
Yeah.
And you just go, wow, Lord.
Okay.
That was pretty amazing.
Here's what, and I love that story. So, got to come watch the documentary that time when y'all have released it, and I'm sitting there watching it, you know, and I'm like, this guy can swim 28 miles in the ocean. I can do things. You know what I mean?
In the dark.
In the dark. So let's set that stage real quick. So first off, go watch the documentary when it comes out, or we can get the link to you.
We're in Greenville, and we're going to do that was kind of a test showing.
Okay.
So we're going to do a showing in November, probably early December.
So come see it, because if you want to be encouraged and inspired and watch someone do something almost impossible, which I'm going to tell you about that here in a second, you got to go see this, because you'll walk away encouraged and not motivated, but shifted a little bit, going, that guy swam 28 miles in 13 hours in the dark in the open ocean. And so that's the piece that I want people to get is, you're not in a pool. You're not on a calm lake. You don't know how deep the water is. You know, you don't really halfway know where you're going, you know? And so you can't touch a flotation device. You're not in a wetsuit. No. You don't have an oxygen tank. You don't have a life jacket on. You just jumped in some shorts, probably some sort of swimming trunks of some sort, whatever they may be, but board shorts for conversation purposes, and swam 28 miles across the open ocean in the dark. And if you can do that, and I am always, when I think about this story, or I even, you know, just knowing you and being in the room and all those kind of things gets me fired up, because God made us all with the capacity to navigate the storm, right? Mm-hmm. Whether we lean into it or not in those moments, and like you said, pray all the time, right? Whether we kind of have a come to Jesus meeting and realize that he didn't say he was going to calm the seas, he was going to calm you in the seas. And we think about that in life. We're going to go through challenges, but are we operating in them with faith or fear? Are we praying? And that is a significant shift in your spiritual growth in life. You know, there's seasons in life where that doesn't happen. You know, life is a challenge and you're like, I'm out, you know, or whatever. You're picking some sort of worldly entertainment or escape instead of saying, hey, God, you know, be a great time to have a conversation right now. And that's a shift in your spiritual growth. So that's the scene. It's 28 miles, 13 hours through the dark, inboard shorts. Japanese
Speedo,
whatever. Yeah, okay.
Even less sexy at 50 years old.
We talked about wearing American flag Speedos during this podcast, and then I totally forgot. So maybe next episode.
But so there's going to be people listening to that go, can't even conceive 28 miles. Like can't wrap your head around it.
28 miles.
Yeah, that's too big. But let me tell you who one of my big inspirations is, and I just met her this summer. Okay, we're in Ireland. Getting ready for a swim from Ireland to Scotland. 53-degree water, cold, right? Cold. Like I stopped calling it cold so I could call it crisp.
Right.
Because I'm like, I need to change my mindset.
Right. You're like, it's not cold.
Crisp.
It's not cold. It's crisp.
It's no bad.
It's like a fresh apple.
And but every day the Chunky Dunkers, there's this retirement like charity group, a bunch of ladies and some men who go in at high tide in the Donaghadee Harbor and get in the water. And some paddle around, some just dunk, some swim. And it's just a really great group of people. Yeah. But there's this one lady. And I watched her the first day, and she basically, when she walks, her I think it was I want to say it was her right leg, basically inverts, like it didn't, like the knee didn't stop it and couldn't step. It just bent almost like a rubber leg. Yeah. And she's on crutches going down, and then she drops the crutches, and then either she drops down into the water or somebody helps her, and she has a flotation device on because she swims a little bit, or she doesn't have her flotation and just swims a bit. But if her arms go out, she has no strength in her legs to be able to swim. So she doesn't go too deep. But I sat and had a conversation with her in the water while she's telling me this. And she's like, but today I made it to 10 feet past that sign. Mm. That's the furthest, deepest I've gone. I'm like, that's so cool. That's so cool. It wasn't about swimming 500 meters or a mile or 10 miles. It was like, I went 10 more feet. Yeah. And then she would get out.
Crutches.
Someone would help her go on her crutches, get up. And then there she is, changing it, and it's 53-degree water. Yeah. And you go, it doesn't have to be big.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point.
But we thrive on the big.
Right.
But I actually think what she's doing is way bigger than anything I've done, because it takes it takes. You already don't have part of you not working.
Right.
At least if my legs go out, I've got my arms. Arms go out, I've got my legs.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Yeah. I think we celebrate the wrong things a lot of times.
That's good. And what's really neat, we were talking about pride and humility earlier, and just a reflection of shift and growth in your life, right? Instead of it being about you and being about this great big thing, you want to encourage people that, that's neat and that's cool and that's tough, but it's really about the small things. It's like the story in the Bible where the lady gave it all, right? Who had little.
My favorite story.
You know what I'm saying?
That's such a great story.
It's like that. You're really correct about that. And I think that we do celebrate a lot of the wrong things, and that's a whole nother conversation. But real quick, I want to talk about when Peter got out of the boat.
Right?
Because I enjoy that story. And I was reading it one day, and I just had almost like an outsider's view of this whole scenario, right?
So let me clarify. You couldn't see yourself as Peter?
Well, I saw myself watching Peter.
Okay.
Right? What are the other guys in the boat, right?
Okay.
So you're sitting there, and this is when we have faith. Mm-hmm. When we step out and we operate in our faith instead of fear, people are watching, right? Mm-hmm. It's about making a difference, right? Because imagine this whole storm's going on. It's this crazy situation. And if you've ever been in a small boats they're not super safe. And I don't know how big the boat was, but I just envision this crazy storm, and everybody's kind of like, this is wild, that we may not make it out of this. And all of a sudden, a guy gets up, right? And you may know him, you may not know him, you may know his name, but you kind of see him, and he gets up, and he's like, I'm going to get out of the boat. And you're like, everybody's looking at each other like, why is he getting up? And he's going to get out of the boat. And I like to remind myself to have get out of the boat kind of faith, right? Because for him to do that, and he got to have a special moment because of it, but for him to do that, to have enough faith to be led to stand up in the storm, to step out of the boat, to step into the water, which doesn't even make any sense. I mean, if you and I were on a boat and you were getting out in a storm, I'd be like, Steve, bro, I don't think that's really good. I mean, I know you're a great swimmer, but I don't think this I don't think this is adding up, right? But then he gets out there and he takes his eyes off Jesus and he starts to sink, and Jesus pulls him up. But he had a very special moment, I think, in his life, or would like to think so, about that connection where Jesus reached down and he pulled him up out of the water. But he wouldn't have been able to have that experience if he hadn't gotten out of the boat.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that piece of it, and in our lives, a lot of times, in order for us to have that moment with Jesus, we've got to get out of the boat faith, right? When things may not make sense, or especially to those around us, but also when we step out in our faith and we go do the things that God made us to do, there's other people watching going, that don't make no sense. But then right?
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Right. That's the.
Yeah, they don't make, they're like, that doesn't make any sense. But he got out of the boat anyway. Mm-hmm. And then they saw that whole experience play out where Jesus reached down and pulled him up. And they probably went, that was the moment though, and probably inspired them in some way to have some get out of the boat faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I love that part of the story. And this was probably a couple months ago when I was reading through it and I thought about the other people on the boat. A lot of times we think of the Peter piece of it and his part, right? But we don't think about the other people watching it play out, and that's why I love to share faith and share God and talk about it. And I challenge myself to operate with faith instead of fear, in a capacity of, do I have get out of the boat faith? When we have those moments to make those choices, to go back to do things or to operate or to get mad or slam somebody or get somebody because you've been got kind of thing, or do I have get out of the boat faith to let God handle the things and me just be who God made me to be?
Yeah. And there's two frameworks in play there. The framework, like you're talking about, if you're in the boat and you're watching others do it, be encouraged.
Yeah.
Be encouraged. Be like, okay, well, somebody else has done this, and that's okay. Sometimes it's good to get encouragement and see hope and resilience, whether it's quitting drugs, investing in your marriage, going to counseling, getting fit, whatever. Look at another brother that you trust, because these guys trust each other.
Sure.
That you trust, who's leaned in to their faith to do this. And that's such a great framework. But the other part of it is, and I think you hit on just the faith it took, but there was one part that Peter did before he even got out of the boat. Mm-hmm. He called out to Jesus. Mm-hmm. And when you call out, it sets the sights, it sets the conversation.
That's good.
How quickly did he take his eyes off the Lord? I mean, it happened, right? And we're no different.
Guilty of it.
But then again, who's going to be there?
Right. Yeah.
Every time. Every time. And then you're like, and you think of somebody putting their hand down and pulling you up.
Right.
What are you doing?
You're looking up.
You're looking right up at their face and the eyes.
There's a connection moment.
Right. Yeah. Right. So both those frameworks work really well. Okay, so if I'm being encouraged, seeing someone else do something, and you feel God calling you to a purpose, you don't want to miss it, number one. But number two, you go, okay, if God's calling me this purpose, then I need to call out to Jesus, be like, can I come to you? Can I step into this? Can I step out the boat?
Yeah.
He's going to say yes, and you're going to fail.
Right.
And that's okay.
It's okay. Because he's going to pull you up out of the water.
He's going to pull you out of the water.
But here's the thing, too, and kind of the challenge to people is when you are encouraged, and you just said something really important there, don't miss it. Because when you're in that moment and you have an opportunity to step out in faith, right? Just like those people were encouraged because Peter did something. Well, when you step out in your faith, whether it's in your marriage or as a father or in business or physical or whatever it may be, the way that you treat somebody, whatever, imagine other people watching. When you step out in faith, you may have the opportunity to make an impact on just one other person. And so when you step out in your faith and you do the things that God's called you to do, there may be maybe just one other person who says, you know what, I see God calling you and tugging on you and you're operating in faith. I think I want to get out of the boat, But also, I also think about the expense of if you don't, right? Because I always think
cost.
There's a cost. Everything costs something. And so if you say, and I've done this in my life where I've chosen fear instead of faith, right? And I wonder who's been watching at that moment and what I missed out on. And I'm going to have to answer for that when I go to heaven, right? God's going to be like, hey, man, I gave you these opportunities to do these things, and here's the story, the highlight reel of what all that looked like, and here's the expense of this. And so I just reflect on those things, but I always encourage myself and others get out of the boat faith. And talking about wild stories in the Bible, another kind of funny reflection moment is when Moses split the Red Sea, or the Dead Sea, right? It was the Red Sea. Red Sea. Too much talking today, not enough coffee. Could you imagine Moses standing there on a rock, and there's a crowd of people, similar kind of situation?
Oh, I know, a crowd?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the numbers.
Yes, a massive amount of people.
Yeah.
And they're there, and they're like, we're done. They're coming to get us. Here they come. I can see them on the hill, right? You're standing there, and God's like, hey, just raise the staff and split the sea. And he's like, he didn't question it, right? How much faith do you have to hear God tell you something, to stand on a rock and split a sea, right? But I imagine being in the crowd and being like, hey, man, what's he going to do? Like, we've been led right here. But the point of that is not only did he have massive faith, but God showed up, right? He did the thing.
Well, but Moses had already seen him at work.
Yes.
So he'd already seen him in Israel, with the plagues, with the Passover. Like, he'd already seen him at work. So now it's like a lot easier. So one thing that my bride does with our family is we get rocks, and we write down all the things for the year that we've seen God do in our lives, so we don't forget.
Yeah.
Because God's the rock, and we're building. That's why we use rocks. It's really cool. But then, when you're in those periods where you feel like your faith is wavering, or you're just not sure. Gosh, like everything's breaking around my house and my body and my, like right now, like
right.
I'm having things go wrong, and I'm just like, are you kidding me?
Right.
And I can go back to those rocks and go, no. He was here in this detail, in this detail, in this detail, in this detail, in this detail. Why am I going to doubt him for moving forward in the other details? Because it goes to Ephesians 3:20. Now to him who can do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine. Not a little bit.
Right. Immeasurably.
Not immeasurable.
Yeah.
Immeasurable.
Immeasurable.
More,
Yeah.
And I think when you start to understand that it's just like you're just in a completely different currency.
Yeah. The economy.
But you've got to have a way to remember and see and praise him for the miracles.
Amen. Yeah.
And that's and we're just not wired like that.
Yeah.
We're wired to see the bad, the not fair.
Right, that immediate thing.
Why did they get that
right.
and I didn't? All these things. We all have these conversations, right? So a way to track prayer requests, a way to track miracles, a way to look back and go, man, we've been praying every morning as a couple together for 6 months.
Yeah.
I'm going to write a letter to my wife and tell her how I feel about that.
Yeah.
And share it with her. And then ask her, what do you think's changed in the last 6 months?
Yeah.
Well, you've showed up for 6 months every day and had coffee with me and prayed with me every day.
I'll tell you something, a good piece of advice somebody gave me. So me and my wife, we have a business meeting together every week. You were talking about, you're running your marriage kind of like a small business. And we do. We talk about schedules and finances and business and all those things that are coming in and out of our lives and kid things and whatever we've got coming up. And it's really helped connect us in our awareness of each other's lives. But I had somebody challenge me, and I can't remember who it was. They said, we have a little list of questions that we ask each other every Sunday. Where did we win this week? What did we miss this week? What appointments did we miss? How did we not show up in our lives or for our daughter or whatever those things look like mentally, physically? Did we not get quiet time in? We skipped it all week, whatever those are. But another question that we recently threw in there is, what did God do for me this week? And have that intimate connection with your spouse, because sometimes they may have an experience out and about or a tough moment where God showed up in their lives and, the busyness of life, you forgot to share it with each other. So, ask your spouse that.
That's a great one. Yeah.
It's a good one. And we enjoy it because we always smile afterwards, like, oh, wow, that's so good, babe. That's wild. We didn't even take time to have that conversation this week. I had no clue. And so it's really just kind of connected us. So I would encourage people to ask yourself that, ask your spouse that, ask your kids that. Hey, how did God show up in your life this week? And they'll go, there's going to be something to share from that. So, Ken, how much time we got?
You were at 56.
Oh, 56 minutes. So we got to wrap it up.
We're rolling.
All right. So
we could do this for hours.
We could do it for hours, right? We do the Joe Rogan Servant Swimmer podcast.
Oh, and then we could go plunge.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, I'm here for it. Pool's pretty cold with these colder nights, and I've been getting in there after my workouts. So, but I always ask people if there's one piece of advice that you could share with somebody to encourage them, or a couple of small tidbits to help them make a difference in their life in some capacity, whatever that may be, whether that's business, spiritual, physical, whatever it may be, something that you have applied in your life, or somebody said to you, or you do apply, where you're like, if I could have a moment to share with somebody that I wanted to make a difference in their life, this is what it would be. What would that be?
Yeah. So, I mean, the obvious things are you go to your habits, right? Your daily disciplines. And I think those are really important. But I'm starting to realize that disciplines and habits, they help over time. They help you grow and all these things. But just with the conversation we've just been having at the end there, I truly believe the more that you can give thanks, and all things give thanks. We had something go wrong, not right in business the other day, right?
Yeah.
Quotes came back. We're about to start it up.
Yeah.
Didn't go well.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I have this choice. We could just start the job and then go, well, the receipts came in more, which I'm just never going to do. Right. I've had it done to me way too many times.
Yeah.
So it was like, we have a phone call. I prayed before I called you. We had an open, honest conversation. We came up with some solutions, and we moved forward. But then, in that moment, at the end, after I got off the phone, I just gave thanks, because God's working in your life and your heart to show you grace, to show us grace, so that I can show grace and not be defensive, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's seeing if we can just slow down and give thanks, even when things don't go to plan.
Because there's a reason for it.
There's always a reason for it.
Yeah.
Because I would ask you this question on the flip side of that. Do you trust me more or less after that conversation?
Right, more, definitely. Yeah.
Right? But if I had shown up.
Yeah. It would be hard for me to not have grace if the bill at the end of the thing is significantly different.
Right. And I think that's the thing. I've heard this, the end doesn't justify the means.
That's right.
It just doesn't.
Yeah.
It's be open, be transparent, and give thanks to the Lord for how He's already working in the situation.
Yeah.
And if you can remember this little thing, when Daniel was thrown into the pit, right, by his brothers, okay? Yeah. The caravan that came by, it just didn't start that morning.
Right. Right. Yeah, they headed out long before.
So if God sent that caravan out long before, He's already at work.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that I'm really on right now is like, look for God's hand in everything, and you will see it.
Yeah.
You'll see it.
We find what we look for. Yeah.
It's good. Three red Jeeps, you'll go find them today, right?
You will.
But if you look for God's goodness and His miracles
and everything,
and His provision and everything,
you'll find
it.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
That's what we're going to leave with today.
I like that. Well, Steve, thanks for being on. Thanks for taking time out of your day. I appreciate you, man. Love you like a brother. I'm thankful for our friendship, and looking forward to many things in the future to come. Going to give a follow-up shout out to our sponsor, the Acquisition CEO. So if you have questions about buying or selling a business, or want some consultation or education on buying or selling a business, hit him up at theacquisitionceo.com. And as always, thanks for checking out the Kingdom Men Transfer Man Nation, and let's go do some winning. See ya.